Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. It is great to see familiar faces and new ones too. So today we're going to move forward out of cluttered spaces, building on last week's how did this accumulation get started? All right. And we're going to begin, though, by remembering the basic fundamental question from last week's podcast, which is, what is maintaining this particular cluttered environment? The reason that's so important is that without it being maintained, it can't be a problem. So first and foremost, I want you to consider some of the things that I have to say, but I also want you to start respecting your own internal experience. All right. So you know yourself far better than anybody else is ever going to know you. You've got to begin to trust that part of yourself so that you can stop living by the shoulds. Okay, should never accomplished anything. It's a guilt trip. It's a rule. Rules are guidelines. They are not life. All right. And so the first question is, what was the first thing when you looked at a cluttered environment that is part of yours? What was the first thing you said to yourself? Okay. Was the voice that you heard? We're not talking about hearing voices. We're just talking about that internal dialogue, okay? What was that voice? Was that your voice? Was that you who was expressing an opinion? Was it the committee? Remember the committee? And for those of you who haven't been part of that podcast, there's a tape that plays inside our head. And some people have louder voices on that tape than others. And there's the critic, there's our parents, there's anyone that we deferred to, there was anyone we trusted, wisely or unwisely. Here's the thing. This is your life, not theirs. They've had their kick at the can. And that committee can be overwhelming. In fact, it can preempt what you say to yourself about your own life. Or have you become so good at being your own critic? Is that a habit that you've developed that you've actually voiced over what the committee would say? And it's actually your voice repeating to yourself the committee's message. The other thing about the committee that I want you to be aware of and to remember is one of the additional reasons that committee's voice is so destructive is that they don't agree with one another. And so you've got this what if going on in your head, second guessing yourself, and then some other voice, some other message that you've heard, some other thing that in a different part of your life was a guiding principle, or you wish it could be a guiding principle. All right. All these messages, who do you listen to? I'm going to suggest that right now, turn the volume down on the committee and start listening to what you're telling yourself, because that's what's driving you. The other is what's trying to interrupt your process. The other thing I want you to think about today, we talked about this last week. So anybody who's new, go back to last week's podcast, fill yourself in. Second question, what stops you from resolving the accumulation? Again, what do you think? It's not one thing. You wouldn't be on this podcast with me so frequently if it was just one thing. Life gets complicated. All right. The reasons that it's not being resolved, however, are not insurmountable. Only if you try to deal with all of them all at once. We break it down. until we can carry the job that is at hand. And if that gets too heavy at times, because not every day do we feel the same way, we break it down again. We break it down again. We break it down until we can carry it. All right. So as you look at the space that you're in right now, or one that you have in your mind's eye, the next question you must ask yourself is, interesting, how did it get started? What stops you from resolving it? What keeps you? Stops is not the same thing as keeps. Stops is sometimes an event or a period of your life or a barrier that has developed, but keeps is right now, currently. This is today. What keeps you from resolving the situation? Could it be thoughts? Your thoughts? Are you trying to come up with perfect answers? Are you afraid to act unless you have all the information? Remember, we never have all possible best information. Are there fears? Remember, we talked in the procrastination segment about fear of success? Are there beliefs that you have about what you should do, what you must do, what the right way is, what the wrong way is? Are there lifestyle habits that now are based on beliefs like overdone recycling? Recycling is a really important activity, but I want you to form the image of you being on a plane and there's a disturbance and the air pressure in the plane is disrupted. You're not necessarily going down, but the mask comes down and you're with somebody. You put your own mask on first. You don't worry about the baggage. You don't worry about anything else. So when you try to live a belief and a value like recycling, I respectfully submit that depending on how severe or how chronic the clutter is for you, whether it ticks enough boxes to be hoarding or not is irrelevant at this point. Do what you need to do. When you get things right to rein, you get things well enough under control, you can go back to really detailed activities like recycling. You can maybe just limit the biggies, the plastics, the glass, the paper. Okay, break it down. All right. Because allowing it to continue being a barrier will prevent you from resolving this situation. Can also, next point, overwhelm you so much that you can't move forward. Chances are, if you're coming to our podcast regularly or you're even interested in it, you've got more than one ball you're trying to keep in the air. Simplify things. Focus. What's it going to take to start that decluttering process? Do you make decisions more difficult than you can arrange, than you can manage at the moment? Keep breaking it down, smaller and smaller chunks, until you can do that 15 minutes a day regularly. Okay. Oh, so if it's okay, we can come back to this section more once these questions, and you can too, whether it's thoughts, fears, beliefs, lifestyle habits. Just do a first cut decision, okay? Because really getting the truth from these considerations, these questions, is like peeling an onion. We can come back to it. You can come back to it, all right? But start now. Undoubtedly, as I said, there are multiple layers to progress. So accept that there is nothing wrong with completing this self-assessment, this self-discovery step by step, okay? In the meantime, let's move on with what you can do now. All right. Let's consider together today how to approach this situation effectively at this point in time, all right? You don't have to wait for the perfect constellation of events to move forward because we never have all the information. So what can we do right now? My guidelines are two basic principles, and I really, really believe in them. One is to respect the attachment we feel for our things, all right? We all assign meanings to our things. We all have attachments. Anyone who says that they don't have attachment to their things, they're not telling you the truth. They haven't really had a close enough look at it emotionally. The second principle, second guideline, is respect the relationship you have with your things, and therefore respect your preferences. We don't want you to get rid of things that are, what we'll talk about in a few minutes, the 1, 2, 3s. Why? Because you will create a void. And if you create a void, or anyone who works with you creates a void, you're only going to fill it. All right. And chances are you'll fill it with more, and you'll fill it with things that aren't your best decision. You're now working from a compulsive need instead of a mindful choice. Respect your attachment to the things you have. That doesn't mean it's going to determine necessarily the outcome. You'll have different attachments to different things. Respect the relationship that you have with those things, which then will guide your preferences. And also, first and foremost, respect yourself by working at your pace. All right. Each of us on individual days has a slightly different pace. Why is that so important? It's absolutely vital, because if you do the Herculean activity, the marathon, you get started, you say, okay, I'm only going to do my 15 minutes. I'm really feeling into it. I'm really, really on a roll here. I'm really getting somewhere. And you go on for an hour, 2, or half a day, or whatever, until the juice runs out. I have news for you. The next time you think about going back to it, that is the association. How tired you are, how much in an adrenaline deficit you are. You won't make yourself go back to it. It really is the 15 to 20 minutes a day you do regularly every single day that will get you where you need to be and keep you where you need to be. So don't create a barrier by those marathon events. Okay, so to do this effectively, you need to understand the following. When you look at the things, what I see, what anybody here who's part of our group might see, probably is different from what you see. So ask yourself, what do you actually see when you look at an item? All right, and respect that. It's okay. These are your things. So an example of that might be, I'm looking at a pile of ladies' clothes, and to everybody else, they just look like ladies' clothes. But when I look at them, I see the costumes that were part of some event that means a lot to me. I might be a sewer. I'm not. I might be a sewer. And so I look at this piece of clothing, which I don't wear every day. But when I look at it, I see that was a lot of hard work. And I really needed to develop a particular skill that was like not an easy thing to do. It represents something. I might be looking at clothing from, say, someone in my family has passed away, and I'm looking at their clothing, trying to make, nobody's going to need that clothing anymore. That's logically. But when I see it, I see something else. It represents something else. That's what I'm talking about when I say you see it actually for what it is. It's clothing that's not going to be used, but it represents something else. It's okay to respect that meaning for now. The other thing I want you to be very aware of, rather than I've got to get rid of things, something has to go, it's too full, and you're coming from a what do I have to give up mindset. Go the other way. How do I feel? And what do I say to myself about that? What's that internal voice saying? Before the should kicks in. Because that message, that meaning can be very powerful, all right? It can be kind of like a really, really important lip sync, it's really quiet, but it's in your head and it's there and it's a powerful message. Listen to it, be aware of it. You can't make a conscious, mindful decision if you shut down all those messages. So when you look at the item, ask yourself, how do I feel? And what do I say to myself? And how powerfully does that register inside me? Does it make me nervous? Does it make me sad? Does it make me frozen? And then ask yourself, what's your relationship to it? Well, it's a tender thing. It belonged to somebody I love. It's 3 sizes too big for me now because and what's your need for it? Your need for it today, moving forward. So I've talked a lot about that. Let me give you the Reader's Digest version of those 3 points. What do you actually see when you look at the item? It's okay. How do you feel about it and what do you say to yourself? Maybe something you're not admitting you're saying to yourself. And what is your relationship to it and your need for it today as you move forward? Okay. We're going to start by going over the scaling process. It's called Elaine's scaling process. It's in Conquer the Clutter. The reason we're going to do that is my clients taught me over 19 and a half years how to support them to honor their relationship to their things, even though some or many of those things weren't able to stay. They ended up with the things that were most important to them. And even though decisions at the time might have been difficult, they don't remember 99.9% of the things that they decided to let go of. It works. It works because it comes from the people who are living this, you or someone you love. Okay, so I use a scaling process with categories from 1 to 10. It's a continuum from 1 to 10. All right. And then I separate that continuum into 3 distinct groups. Those 3 groups represent different relationships. Each category, each of those groups has a small range, and because it's normal that we don't have the same feelings about everything in each of those 3 categories. So just to give it a name, the I love it category, okay? We don't feel the same about everything. We love that intensely. And that can be confusing. I like it, and in a perfect world, I'd like to keep a good deal of it category. We don't feel the same about everything in that category. And if something's got to go, this is it category. All right. We don't feel everything the same about everything in that category either. So just relax and be true to yourself. Okay. By having some elasticity within each group, it's easier to figure out for yourself where the boundaries are between the I love it group, in a perfect world, I'd like to keep it group, and if something has to go, this is it group. Okay, so that's, and that range, okay, I give a little leeway, that elasticity. So let's look now at how to use that. I love it, I like it in a perfect world, and if something's got to go, this is it. All right. In addition to all of this information, this scaling process, all right, can help you categorize items just when you're sorting. Maybe you're a process person. Maybe you're not an immediate decision maker. There are two basic camps, basically, that people fall into. And you know what? I've come to believe it's hardwired into you. I need to process. Some people are process people. There's nothing wrong with that. Respect it. No, I want to work from that corner, and I never want to have to pick that item up again. I'm going to make the tough decision item by item as we go, and I'm not coming back to it. Those are the immediate decision people. It may take them 20 minutes to decide something, but once they decide it, it's out, it's gone, or it stays. Okay, respect what you are. All right. So even if you're a process person, all right, so long as you're not perpetually moving piles, this scaling process can help you decide. That's a 1, 2, 3. That's in the I love it group. That's in the I love it group. Oh no, that's in the if something's got to go group. That's in the in a perfect world, I'd like to keep it, but maybe not. We'll have to see how much space I have group. Okay. All right. So remember, each thing that you keep, here's the other thing. Each thing that you decide to keep, no matter how precious it is to you or not, absolutely must have a permanent place. Absolutely. All right. The permanent place must be where it's normally used, optimally within 3 to 4 steps, but it absolutely must remain accessible. So if we're talking about books, we're not talking 3 and 4 deep on a shelf. All right, that's kidding yourself. Let's have a different discussion. All right. And everything you keep, remember, every single thing you keep will require something of you sooner or later. So you want to make decisions that keep that in mind, that you don't create a big job for yourself later on when you can't maintain it. Has to be able to be maintained. So think long and hard about what you decide to keep. Maybe you've got to dust it, clean it, wipe it. Maybe there's maintenance that you need to perform on it. Maybe you need to protect it against visitors. The more you keep, and the more areas there are where mice, as an example, all right, can burrow. And yes, mice can get into any space. There is no house, I don't care how tight the fit, all right? I don't care how tight the fit. There is no house that mice can't get into. And this is the time of year that they're looking for harbor. The dedicated use of limited space is finite. And please think long and hard about promising your time, your future time, to maintaining things that are not going to be part of your daily life and that aren't going to give you something back. And depending on the actual value of it, the more you keep, maybe the cost of insurance as well. So, and fundamentally, all right, whether it's precious or not precious, it's costing you your peace of mind. And too much is resulting in this state of being overwhelmed. It better be precious if you're prepared to forfeit that or compromise that. It better be precious to you. I can't tell you it's not, but you need to be honest with yourself. So today we're going to drill down a little further. We're going to move it into a hands-on phase. And we're going to do that by identifying, as you look around now, maybe you're in an area where there is clutter. Just scan the area. Let's do a little bit of experimentation, okay? Just as you scan the area by looking around, see if you can identify what I call the easy wins. Those are, oh, yeah, that could go. It's not really that important. Oh, geez, that's, that's sort of, time has not been kind to that thing. And also look around and see, are there any obvious barriers? I can't get to it. There's too much in front of it. I don't have any place to put it. When I get it out and I'm trying to sort it, I don't have any place to put it. All right. Are there any aids to letting go? I could make that table my focal point, and that could become my sorting table, because you're going to need a sorting area, a staging area, and it has to be accessible. Okay, so just look around and see, is there anything that you want to look at with a different eye? Easy wins, barriers, and aids to letting go to support the process. Okay. I mentioned the 1 to 10 scaling process. I mentioned the 3 categories. I mentioned the reason for the range. Okay. Now let's look at the actual scaling process. Okay. If you have the book, Conquer the Clutter, Strategies to Identify, Manage, and Overcome Hoarding, it begins on page 76, okay? So in addition to that, it will also help if you use the on-site clutter coaching toolkit. And it's available free of charge. If you have a pencil handy or a pen handy, this might be helpful. I'll just take a second while you get one. It's available free of charge on the Johns Hopkins book press. It's Johns Hopkins, one word, book.press.jhu.edu/title, TITLE/conquered-clutter to help you categorize the items. Okay, so it ends with the -clutter. All right, if you have any difficulty, let me know, and either myself or Heather, my new assistant, in addition to Donna, will email you, or I'll post it on the website, one or the other, okay? So each thing you keep must have a permanent place. The permanent place this is a recap. The permanent place must be an area where it's normally used, and it has to remain accessible. It's only worth keeping if you get the joy out of it by being able to see it, or you get the use out of it by actually being able to use it. All right. So the same is true, okay? This scaling process, I'm just going to check in here, okay? The same is true for all other categories, the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The work, I've got a duplication here, sorry folks. Okay, on the working at your pace, you may not fully realize how tired you are until you stop. Keep an eye on it. That's why I want you to break things up into 15-minute work sessions, okay? All right. All right, let's see here. Okay. So if you have a coach, that person, it could be a friend, it could be a professional, whatever, it doesn't matter. That person can ask for clarification on the criteria that you set for each category. So before you start to decide what represents a 1, 2, 3, precious, can't imagine life without it. I'd like to keep it in an ideal world category, the 4, 5, 6s. There it is, it can go, 7, 8, 9, 10s. I want you to stop and create in your mind criteria for how are you going to know the 1, 2, 3s when you see them? How are you going to know the 4, 5, 6s when you see them? How are you going to know the 7, 8, 9, 10s? You know how you're going to know it? You're going to be true to yourself. You're going to listen to that voice that says, there it is. Or, oh, I don't care what anybody says, that's not going anywhere. That is precious. There, and the same is true for the other categories. What makes something not as precious, but still kind of, I'd really like to keep it. What makes something, no, you know what? Other people might find that useful, but that is not something that I want to keep. Okay, the reason for that you need those criteria before you start is because if you're planning on figuring it out one at a time as you pick it up, you're doomed. The very reason that it came into your environment in the first place was that it had either some importance or it was attractive to you. You think it's going to stop being attractive to you? No, it's not. That's your response to it. Respect it. But maybe scale it according to, you know what, compared to the 1, 2, 3s, or an item from the 1, 2, 3, the 7, 8, 9, 10s don't even make the cut because space and time is finite. You don't have time and space for everything. That's why you're feeling overwhelmed. That's why you're here. That's why you got the book. Respect that too. All right. What are the criteria? So what would some of those criteria be? Some people send me some ideas into the chat box. And in a few minutes, let's do a review of it. Okay. Now, remember also, don't create a void. All right. If you need to consider letting something go, consider it. Give yourself 3 or 4 days, set it aside, look at it frequently, and decide. Compared to the 1, 2, 3s, even though this might be a lovely item, maybe it's not you today moving forward. All right. Maybe it didn't turn out to be the best purchase. That's okay. All right. That's okay. If you're not perfect, maybe you misjudged it. Maybe you want to sell it. Try not to sell everything, however, or make selling important for everything, because that takes time and you never get the price you expect. All right. And please, anybody who's thinking of having a yard sale or a garage sale, forget it. It is so much work. All right. And half the time you don't get a fraction of what you expect. It's a tremendous amount of time and effort taken away from the work that needs to be done to return your space to an enjoyable space. Okay? All right. All right. Now, first thing, sometimes it's difficult to appreciate the progress that you're making. So some people, as they start clearing space by identifying their piles of 1, 2, 3, based on criteria, their piles of 4, 5, 6s, their piles of 7, 8, 9, 10, by their preset criteria. Some people, particularly individuals, the correlation I have discovered, it's probably not the only reason, but individuals who live with any degree of ADD or ADHD seem to really, really benefit from taking a picture of something that they are feeling not 100% about letting go of, but they know they're going to let go of it. They want to in order to make progress. That seems to really be, and if you think about it, that makes sense, because individuals with ADD and ADHD, one of the primary aids to making progress is to externalize the process, to give themselves something to attend to, where they can register steps or what the process is going to be, what their next action, their next activity is going to be. So maybe that makes sense. So if you are having difficulty letting go of something, but you know you don't have the space for it or the need for it, and it's going to occupy space you want and need for something you love, try taking a picture of it. Also, take a picture, even with your smartphone, okay? Take a picture of the spaces little bit by little bit that you clear, and go back. And when you look at all the other things that have to be done, don't defeat yourself. Focus on the progress and how it's creeping along, increasing, okay? All right. So one of the things I'm going to ask you not to do is don't start with the most intense category to let go of, okay? So that would be, you're not going to let go of the 1, 2, 3s, all right? We're going to try our level best, and in 19 and a half years, I have never known a situation, no matter how severe, where the person we weren't able to find appropriate spaces for the 1, 2, 3s, and usually a fair number of the 4s. All right. So I'm going to suggest that you start with 7, 8, 9, 10s, the easy wins. Start pulling those out and see if you can free up space, and then move forward a bit, all right, into the 4, 5, 6s. All right. Be gentle with yourself. Okay. And keep going until you approach your energy limit. And I'm going to ask you again, please set that in 15-minute increments. And you only move forward to the second, third, fourth, 15-minute increment when you've stopped and considered how much steam you have in the tank. Because the trick is going back to do it tomorrow. Do things like take a short break. Do something else. All right. Do something enjoyable, doing a little self-care, a little R&R. Always respect your true limit. Okay. Don't let the decluttering become a drudgery. Don't keep working at the piles past your limit. Remember, the biggest mountain is best moved one stone at a time. Okay, it didn't happen overnight. It's not going to undo itself overnight. Okay. All right. So when you're looking at these collections or these gatherings, these piles of things, what were they based on? What reasons did you give yourself for? Just pick one pile. All right. What reason is it a pile? Does it represent, and are there things combined in that pile that represent memories? Are you afraid that if these don't turn out to be the 1, 2, 3s that you keep because there isn't enough space, are you afraid that you'll lose that memory? Just be aware. If it represents a relationship or someone who's no longer with you for whatever reason, are you afraid that you'll lose the memory of that person, or maybe even in some way you're disrespecting that person? Does it represent, any of those items represent a need you have? What are those needs? Okay. Is there an aesthetic response to it, or tactile characteristics? Another really powerful sense is our sense of scent, our sense of smell. Is there something about it that evokes a powerful response in you? Okay. Our sense of smell is a tremendously powerful sense that just enriches the experience of whatever, good, bad, or indifferent. All right. So I want you to start. Let's do another little experiment, okay? If you have an item around you, okay, just bring it close to you. Okay, look at that item and visualize and experience your truth and the intensity of various factors until you have a really, really rich internal experience visually, auditorily. So if it's something that has a scent, if it or a sound, if you scrunch it or you move it, or is there an auditory? How many senses does it evoke this response? Is there a kinesthetic response? All right. I want you to just experience the internal richness of that experience with the simplest item. Now, with this internal experience that's been heightened, fresh in your mind, remind yourself why that thing belongs to the category it belongs to. Especially if you chose an item that was a 1, 2, 3. All right. The reason that I want you to do that, just to practice that skill, because your response is you. You can think it, you can mind shift it, you can do a lot of things, you can listen to the committee, but nothing but you will evoke that rich experience internally. That's you. And it doesn't matter whether you're applying it to the 1, 2, 3s, the 4, 5, 6s, or the 7, 8, 9, 10. So after we're finished today, I'm going to challenge you. Your homework is to pick a powerful 1, 2, 3. How can you find that same internal experience with something that represents, I really, in an ideal world, it's not really a 1, 2, 3, but I'd like to. 4, 5, 6 category, and nope, there it is. If something's got to go to make space, that's certainly going to be it. We'll try to find it a good home, but no, that can go. I want you to feel that, because I firmly believe that we live in our hearts and in our feelings. All right, and if we're smart, okay, and we're not overwhelmed, too overwhelmed, we run it by our head for logic. So start with the criteria and then test it out with the internal experience, a representative of each category. And the reason that's going to be so important is that as you go through these piles, I want you to keep those 3 things. They're not going anywhere, because they are going to be your acid test for. Just run it like a Geiger counter. Have you ever heard the Geiger counter? You run it over something, it goes. Well, this experience that respects you, okay, is going to go, but it's going to light up. It's going to light you up when you take a really great example of a 1, 2, 3, and you run it by, and you've got your 4, 5, 6 here, and your 7, 8, 9, 10. You're going to add a kinesthetic element to the decision making. And that's how you're going to make I can live with it decisions. Because if it sets off bing, 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 bing for the 1, 2, 3, no, I love it. There it is. No, that is like, I don't care. That stays. That's so precious to me. And nobody gets to tell you what's precious and not precious. Even if you've got somebody in helping you with the physical work, the best they can do to support you is to remind you of the criteria you already set and ask you to reflect on how your criteria, as you set them, is represented by this item. So it can be a mindful experience as well, a mindful decision. And that item that is a 4, 5, it's sort of in the middle, all right? You run that by. You say, yeah, you know what? No, it's not a 1, 2, 3. It's nowhere near a 1, 2, 3. And then the 7, 8, 9, 10s probably will be a little easier. But if you take a really great representation of a 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in the 7, 8 range, okay, and you run it by, you'll have that response. You'll have a 7, 8, 9, 10 response. You say, okay, that goes to the 7, 8, 9, 10 pile. Or you'll have a 4, 5, 6. And, you know, then we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But if you have a 1, 2, 3, it goes in the 1, 2, 3 pile. We'll worry about its permanent place as the next step. Now, here's the thing. Depending on how much you have to decide, how many things, how many piles you have to decide, I also want you, okay, to use the 4, that best example of a 4. It could almost, but not quite be a 3. Okay, just didn't somehow make the cut. Okay, and the 7, that best example of that. Well, I can go that for sure. Okay, now I want you, whatever is left, all right, now I want you to take the 4. Remember it, enrich that internal experience, smell it, whatever, memories. It's a rich memory internally, why it's so important to you, a 4, and why it isn't as a 7. Now I want you to run it over what remains. And the closer it is to the 4, and it meets the criteria, okay, set the 4s aside. Okay, set all the other 4s aside. There's hope for some or all of those 4s. But the closer it is to the 7, take basically the 6s now, okay, and set those aside into the 7, 8, 9, 10s. And now the only thing you have to decide are the 5s. You have just cut down all of those decisions into one pile, the 5s. Do you know how much work you have just avoided having to do? Because I can't imagine there will be very many people, because I haven't met them in 19 and a half years, that can't manage once we eliminate the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10s now. They're going to go to new homes, all right, or donated, or they're going to be discarded depending on their condition. Okay. The 4s are going to remain kind of in holding pattern, because in an ideal world, you'd love to keep some or all of them. Who knows? There may be room. Remember, though, you want to keep some space available for the ones of tomorrow. Otherwise, all you've got is the past. And if you're going to live your life, this is not the last thing you're going to fall in love with, right? You're going to be more discriminating, because now you're going to have the criteria really fresh in your mind. If it isn't a 1, 2, 3, I'm not settling for it. No substitutes. I'm keeping my space mentally, physically. I'm keeping it available for tomorrow's ones and the next day's ones. Okay? That's why it's so important to do this work. So hold the 4s. Now, the 5s. We'll do a different podcast on the 5s, because that's really where the decisions have to be made. Okay? All right, we've got some questions here. In fact, we've got 25 questions here. All right, let's have a look. I've used this technique not successfully for any length of time, of course, because of adult ADD. Yeah. What's the pattern of not returning to it the next day? Well, you've either overdone it and you have made a negative association, or you're not giving yourself enough reason to go back to it the next day. And so it's sort of like the decision you make when you decide to brush your teeth or not brush your teeth. You're going to pay a price for it, right? You don't brush your teeth. It's the same thing as deciding, I'm going to fill my car today because I'm here. I don't want to stop. I just want to go home. Okay, and so the next day you go out, you go to start the car. You don't have enough fuel in it to get you where you need to go. The scientific mental health term for it is there's a breakdown in your commitment to mindfully self-regulate. And we're going to do we'll probably do 2 or 3 podcasts on how to start and reinforce self-regulating. Yeah. Okay, so what's the inner unconscious block? It's self-regulating. One of the things too, ask yourself a simple question. It may not change the outcome, but it's a beginning. And that is, if I give my word to someone else, do I keep my word? If I make a promise, do I keep my promise? What's my word worth? Because that defines you fundamentally, right? How reliable are you? If you give your word to someone else, do you keep it? Well, why would you not do the same for yourself? Okay. And procrastinating. If you do this repeatedly, this planning and not doing, I really want you to pull out Jane Berger's book, Procrastination, Why You Do It and How You Can Stop Now. All right. Because it's the Bible. You may be talking about procrastination. Go back and watch the podcasts we did on procrastination. Go back and watch them and reinforce it if you don't have the book. And Tammy says to everyone, I don't feel so defeated. Tammy, where did you go? I don't feel so defeated. This thing's hopping around on me. Give a look here. Hold on. Just be a sec here. It jumped on me. Oh, Jim's put the link. Good for you, Jim, for JHUP. Clarissa, thank you. Grateful for your help. Dina, for me, an 8, 9, 10 is something which is, not useful to me, yes, and can be thrown out or given away. So that's where it's going. I'm going to ask, though, that you go inside and ask yourself, so what is my relationship with this thing and why? Based on what? Values, beliefs, experience, whatever it is. What is my internal reason for it being a 7, 8, 9, 10? What made it a 7, 9? Why is it not a 1, 2, 3? What is it about this thing? Yes, not useful. That's right. But sometimes there's a deep relationship with something too. Okay. A criteria. Is it mine or am I just, oh, I love that. Kyle, oh, Kylie, I love that. Yes, like my dining room set. Perfect, yes. Yeah, is it mine? Is it mine? Okay, or am I just the custodian of this thing? Okay, am I a curator? Okay, Dina, a 1, 2, 3 is something that's really difficult to replace and gives me joy to use it or see it. Okay, so just in the Marie Kondo definition of joy, okay, watch the joy thing. Yes, we do want the thing to give you joy, but it's also true that not everything that gives you joy is good for you, okay? And there's also meaning, all right? What gives your life meaning? And you can be surrounded by piles of things that give you joy. Does it give you meaning? Does it give your life meaning? Or does it actually deprive you of your meaning? Joy is a great thing, but it's sort of like sugar. A steady diet of just joy is not realistic. There's also meaning, and there's from time to time hard work to preserve the meaning and the options in our life. Okay, Alina, wonderful. I repurpose many items. Others are waiting to be looked at. I know, it's exhausting, tedious, and boring. It is not excuses. It is not excuses, Alina. No, don't do that to yourself. Don't anybody do that to themselves. Your reasons are not excuses. They are not a cop-out. They are the way your mind thinks. Respect it, okay? But also challenge it. Can I ask you a question? All of you, anybody who resonated with that. Okay, and we're going to stay on and we're going to answer all the questions because I really appreciate you taking the time and investing. Why do you give yourself so many jobs? Why do you give yourself so many jobs? If today was the last day you were going to be on this earth, is this the way you want to spend your time? Is this the way you want to spend your life force? I always look at my choices, and I've got difficult choices too, folks. I do too, okay? Nobody's got a perfect life, but I always ask myself, is this worth my life force? Okay? Is this worth my life force, my time, my energy, my focus? Watch out for the shoulds, Alina. Okay, watch out for the shoulds. Okay. And Maureen to everyone. Maureen, let me get you down here, Maureen. Okay, having trouble with the cursor here. Okay, a 9 or 10 I can easily put in the garbage or donation bag, recycle without a thought or any pang of emotion. 8s, I talk to myself about it and easily decide in 15 minutes that it can go. Good for you. Good for you. Now, if you could move that upstream to the 6s, okay? See if you can apply that to the 7s and 6s. Because the truth is, paper is a wonderful example. Do you know how much paper comes into our life unsolicited every single week? It's enough to choke a horse. And all of that paper generally has messaging on it that looks so important. This could be a deal. This could be important. This could be whatever. All right. 99% of it isn't. Even good information, it isn't the time for it. See if you can move, if you've got a handle on it, up to the 8s. See if you can move it to the 7s and 6s. You have just made your life exponentially easier. Now, yes, ADT here. Photos help me remember. That's right. You know what? If a visual memory is important to you, that's great. Do it. Love that. Take a picture of the cleared space. Yes, because this is work, folks. You need to give yourself some juice and some reminder of the fact that you're making progress. Whatever progress that is, it's all good. Yes, and no matter how big or how little. I put a letter in the mailbox yesterday that sent me, okay, such a reward, and little things can feel good. I put a letter in the mailbox yesterday that made me feel good. Done. Tiny steps are valuable. They are. You win by baby steps. Consistent, repeated baby steps to prevent an increasing buildup day to day. Each day, don't let it pile up more. And each day, chip away at what has built up. That is a winning combination. By 15 minutes, I have so many things. That's okay. It's all doable, Colette. Alina, I often save things for a project. However, I know. Do you know, one of the things that I really encourage people to do is devote yourself to your project. Just bite into it and get pleasure, achievement, whatever it is that's made it a project worthwhile to you to take it on. Focus on it, okay? And have the product that you need for that project. And because you're a project person, have one in the wings. And start, to the extent that you have the space for it, start accumulating just the product you need for that other project in the wings. And trust the universe that when you're ready for the next project, we're not running out of stuff, folks. Okay, what you need will be available the same or better. All right, it's not the last product, the last opportunity that's going to come your way. Then, all my 1, 2, 3 items evoke a consistently strong emotion, response, regardless how long I've had them. However, I'm realizing that one of those emotions oftentimes is guilt. It's been a journey to get to this point, to recognize the power of this emotion and to acknowledge that it's a driver for me, putting items in this category. Now, the next hurdle will be trying to source the origin of that guilt and lessen it. It's doable, Sam. Only then can I tackle reducing the disproportionate number of items that are currently still in the must-keep category. You're absolutely right. Melanie, how do you get help when you live with an enabler? That's a good one. I've never had that question before for you, Melanie. Let me consider that. How do you unenable the enabler? That's an interesting podcast. Let me give that some thought, okay? So I guess one of the ways, just because you've asked the question, this won't be the whole story. One of the ways is to put them on notice. I have this vulnerability. And if you care about me, like really care about me, you won't make it easier for me to fail myself. If you really care, and you won't try to take over control by telling me what to do either. I'm a big girl. Okay, I'm a big girl. I'm responsible. But we all have vulnerabilities. And so I'm asking you, I'm working on this, and I'm asking you to help me by not enabling me. However, that does not give you permission to go to the other end of the spectrum and start taking control away from me. Just don't put stuff in harm's way. Okay? Colette, for so many reasons, some of my wife and twin sister that passed away, I know, depending on how long they're gone, I think I've told everybody the story of my mom, both my mom and my dad had very long protracted deaths. And, I was honored to be able to return the care that I received to both of them. And of my mother's things, yeah, I've got some furniture and that kind of thing that's useful that we can use, and I've passed on the rest. But I have her purse, I have her wedgie shoes, and I have her glasses. And I have the vest she knitted for my father with his name printed in the collar of it on 2 hangers in my closet. And there is a Belique Virgin that someday I will tell you the story of. It has a very, very important meaning in our family. And after the people get out, the animals get out in case of an emergency, those would be the 2 other things I would grab. All right. But it can't be everything. It can't be everything. And you know what? Probably the people that those things represent wouldn't want you to keep everything, because it is no substitute for having them. They're still with you wherever we go. I don't think that love dies. Maybe it takes a different form. All right. I'm not going to preach, but I personally believe it takes a different form. And the reason I believe that is sometimes when I've been in a quandary up to my neck, I'll say, oh, and it's almost like I can hear them. Now, whether that's the messages they've given me that I still can draw strength from. In the book, I tell you about a really difficult time in my life, and just, that knot in your stomach on another day. I wasn't depressed. I was just really, really overwhelmed. And I thought, what do I have? You always have something. And I saw my father's face. My mother was great too, but for whatever reason. And every morning I made a practice to go look in the mirror and say, you're Ken Birchall's daughter and you can do this. Doesn't matter how many times you go down. It only matters if you don't get back up. Get back up today. You don't have to worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow's another day. Today, get back up and get in the game. Okay? Who is your strength? And I can tell you right now, it isn't stuff. It isn't stuff. Stuff isn't enough. Okay? Stuff doesn't sustain us. It gets in the way. And like Alina says, it takes a lot of our time and life force to manage it. Okay? So it does cost us something. Okay. Maureen, thanks everyone for sharing. Guilt is a big one. Some ethnic groups specialize in guilt, I understand, the Irish being among them. And how's it working for you? To quote Dr. What is his name? Dr. Phil. How's it working for you? How useful is that guilt today? Because if it's too heavy, put it down. Just put it down. Stop dragging it along behind you. Let's do a podcast on guilt. I'm going to see if I can get somebody who knows a lot more about it than I do, and do some research and see if we can put together a podcast on guilt. Working for a long period of time with the hope of finishing a job or plan is a serious concern for me. I heard you mention working in 15-minute increments. I have used this technique not successfully for any length of time, of course, because of adult ADD. And so, Tammy, use a timer. Doesn't matter if it's a timer on your cell phone or a physical timer or a timer on the stove. Use a timer. And you're out of jail. When that ping goes, okay, it's over. Nothing else is expected of me. But from the time it starts for that 15 minutes, just bite down on it and focus on what you have to do. All right. The other thing for those people, I don't know, maybe this will sound kind of ridiculous. I don't know, but it occurred to me for those people who are having trouble, all right, getting started or keeping up with the 15 minutes a day, even once a day. I'm going to ask you to try a little experiment. All right, somewhere, go stand in front of the piles, turn on a timer, wherever it is, and just step in place for 15 minutes. Just march in place, okay, for 15 minutes. Just start getting yourself active. You don't have to touch anything, no decisions. As a baby, as a real baby first step, just stand in front of the stuff and talk to it. Look at it, make friends, get acquainted, familiarize yourself, be part of. Okay. If you feel inclined in that 15 minutes to reach out and solve something, bonus. But as a baby step, sometimes always the getting started is the hardest part, but sometimes getting the juice going too, and marching in place. Okay, marching in place for 15 minutes might get that juice going. We have 23 more questions and we're 15 minutes over. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Jim to help me save all those questions, the 23. We're going to start next week with the 23 questions. Okay, so I'm going to have to sign off for now. You folks have a wonderful week, and I hope to see every one of you back next week. Bring your friends. Bring those people who you think might be a good clutter buddy. Or maybe you want to find out if they would be a good clutter buddy if they've offered help, because they can listen in and then talk to them after about what they've heard. And if you don't like the answers, chances are that's not your best pick for a clutter buddy. Okay, we can start sorting the men out from the boys, to use that expression, because not every great friend or someone who loves you is a good clutter buddy. See you next week, everyone. Thanks for coming.